He wanted to trade out of Cleveland, or at least that is what he said.
Myles Garrett has just become the highest paid non-QB in NFL history. It's worth $40 million a year.
Okay, I can't believe we're making a video on this, primarily because it's like the Cleveland Browns did the same exact thing they did 3 off seasons ago, but once again, and in a scenario that makes far less sense. So before we get to the content, our baseball channel's first video is almost at 40,000 views. It's called Uni Diamond Talk, and we're giving away 10 copies of MLB The Show 25 to a subscriber that turns on their notifications on that channel. And now that we get all that out of the way, today's video is sponsored by Prize Picks. We've been having a dominant run making easy money on our NBA props that I give away on my Instagram at The Flight Mike and on my Patreon at Mikerophone. Make sure you use my promo code Mikerophone to get $50 when you make a play of $5 or more, or just click in the link in the description down below. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Cleveland Browns are known for many things, none of which is making good roster decisions or putting together a winning championship contender. They've come close throughout their entire history. In the 2021 season, they were able to defeat their division rival Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round. And in the divisional round, they came really close to defeating Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. 1 year later, Baker Mayfield suffers a shoulder injury, gets called out by Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad, and in that offseason, they decided to make the worst trade in NFL history. Instead of using Baker Mayfield's shoulder as leverage in a contract extension,
telling them that we're willing to bring you back but on a cheaper contract and investing that capital elsewhere to build a Cleveland Browns super team,
they decided to do the exact opposite. You see, Deshaun Watson has been out of football at this point for about a year, and his previous season was one of the most prolific seasons we've ever seen a quarterback have in NFL history on one of the worst teams in the NFL. In his final season for the Texans, Watson completed 70% of his passes for over 4,800 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He did this while leading the Texans to a 4-12 record, and then he was out of football for an entire season as he demanded a trade from the Houston Texans, and then was dealing with the allegations that were levied against him. So once criminal charges were dropped in regards to Deshaun Watson, he decided to do this like grandiose tour of the teams that he would consider signing with. Ironically, most of these teams were actually in the NFC South. He visited with the Falcons, the Saints, the Panthers, and he even turned down the Cleveland Browns. But the Cleveland Browns were so convinced that if they were able to get Deshaun Watson on this team, they'd be instant Super Bowl contenders. So they decided to make the worst trade in NFL history, trading 3 first-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks, and a third-round pick to the Houston Texans in return for Watson. People were wondering, why would Deshaun Watson agree to go to the Cleveland Browns after initially rejecting them? Well, it's because the Cleveland Browns then fully guaranteed Deshaun Watson's $230 million contract over the next 5 seasons. This contract is so egregious that no quarterback has ever signed a fully guaranteed deal since, and I don't think Deshaun Watson has done any favors for those quarterbacks, because it seems like the moment he got to Cleveland, he just stopped trying. I mean, so far as a Cleveland Brown, he's thrown for 3,365 passing yards, completed 61% of his passes, 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, while leading the Browns to a 9-10 record in the 19 games he's played. He tore his Achilles tendon this past year, despite having his worst season to date, and he re-tore it in the offseason, which means he's probably going to be out for the entire 2025 season, which doesn't even matter because even if he was playing, he'd be terrible. And the Cleveland Browns are stuck paying his contract. The Cleveland Browns are clearly a team that's headed for nowhere. If you're in this situation, it's time to blow it up. Trade Myles Garrett, trade Denzel Ward. Nick Chubb's best years are behind him. A rebuild is on the horizon, and if you are able to get adequate value for your best players, then this rebuild would be relatively quick. You just have to be very honest with yourselves, look yourselves in the mirror, and decide it's time for a rebuild. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are doing it. They traded Geno Smith for a 3rd-round pick. Do you think Geno Smith would be worth a 3rd-round pick 1 year later if he had a down season with a rebuilding Seahawks team after they trade DK Metcalf? No. But the Seahawks traded him at the peak of his value. They're trying to trade DK Metcalf at the peak of his value. They're moving on from Tyler Lockett. This team is headed headed for a rebuild, or at least a brief retooling, because they have a very solid defense. And Myles Garrett very much understands this, as about a month ago, he stated that he requested a trade. And we just read this statement, it's so freaking funny. He said, as a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl, and that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal has never been to go from Cleveland to Canton, and it has always been to compete and win a Super Bowl. Now, Myles Garrett has made a ton of money in the NFL. I want to make sure that we place an emphasis on that, and he's without a doubt one of the best edge rushers, if not the best edge rusher in the entire NFL. The man has 102.5 sacks in 8 years in the NFL. The only year he hasn't had double-digit sacks was his first year, and he's made 4 first-team All-Pros. There's no question about it. Myles Garrett is going to be a Hall of Famer once he decides to hang it up, and it makes sense going into his age 29 season that he would want to play some meaningful football. Now, when this came out, we were starting to speculate on what potential trade compensation would look like for Garrett. When Khalil Mack was 27 years old, the Raiders traded him to the Chicago Bears. The Bears gave up 2 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 6th-round pick for Mack, a 2nd-round pick, and a conditional 5th-round pick. Unfortunately, the Raiders burned those picks, and really, it's actually kind of pathetic what they did with those picks. One of those picks turned out to be Josh Jacobs, which turned out to be pretty solid. The other pick ended up being Damon Arnett, which is most famous for this.
On everything I love, I will kill you. You talking crazy. Like, I really did kill you. I real deal kill you, man. I will real deal kill you, man.
But I digress. This makes a lot of sense given where the Cleveland Browns are, and I was expecting them to trade up to the #1 overall pick and make a play for Abdul Carter, who everyone's calling the next coming of Micah Parsons. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with the fact that he wore the number 11 for Penn State, just like Micah Parsons did, and the fact that they're edge rushers, even though they play nothing alike. It makes a lot of sense to move on from your generational edge rusher, get some assets in return, and head towards a full-scale rebuild, because you are not competing so long as Deshaun Watson is under contract. Maybe trade a future 3rd-round pick to move up to #1 to make sure you get Abdul Carter, because the Titans are trying to trade the #1 overall pick. But Andrew Berry said, no, we're going to keep Myles Garrett. Almost immediately, actually. He told reporters at the Senior Bowl that he won't entertain trade offers for Myles Garrett. Once again, he reiterated it. He said that he is not interested in trading Garrett, and there's a lot of work to be done here by both sides before this situation's resolved. Bear in mind, Andrew Berry was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns when they made the Deshaun Watson trade. So what was his resolution there? Well, pay Deshaun Watson a ton of money and make him an offer he couldn't refuse. So what does he do here? Well, once again, it seems like the Cleveland Browns are opting for the same strategy. And it's actually insane, because just the other day, the Las Vegas Raiders agreed to a huge contract extension for Max Crosby. I mean, the guy's getting paid $35.5 million per year, which is more than Nick Bosa, which resets the edge rusher market, which is a significant amount of money. This deal was so significant that the Cincinnati Bengals told Trey Hendrickson that
You can seek a trade. We're not paying you that much.
But oh boy, the Cleveland Browns really outdid themselves here. Because according to Adam Schefter, from trade to truce and beyond, the Browns and Myles Garrett reached an agreement today on a record contract extension that averages $40 million per year and includes $123.5 million in guaranteed money, and now makes him the highest paid non-QB in NFL history, sources tell ESPN. Garrett's agent Nicole Lynn of Clutch Sports and the Browns GM Andrew Berry finalized the deal today. Guys, keeping one of your stars is always a good thing, but this is one of the most egregious overpays I think I've ever seen in NFL history. Look, Myles Garrett is a star, and he's incredible. To go from $35.5 million for an edge rusher to $40 million after an edge rusher demanded a trade when you're not even close to contention is insane to me. In my opinion, you should trade Myles Garrett in this situation. I don't blame Myles Garrett for taking the money. Bro said,
Okay, pay me almost as much as Deshaun Watson, and I'm fine with not winning a Super Bowl my entire career.
I'm not gonna blame Myles Garrett for signing this. To give you an idea of how crazy this contract is, Myles Garrett's getting paid more than Matthew Stafford and just slightly less than Josh Allen, whose average per year is $43 million. And if this was any other team, I'd say it's a great move. But in this case, I mean, what are you trying to achieve here? So they restructured Deshaun Watson's contract in order to make this happen. And although Cleveland Browns fans could be excited about this now, I don't get the point in kicking the can down the road even further here. You could have gotten a generational return for a player like Myles Garrett. You could have retooled instead of rebuilt. You could have been terrible this year and then maybe drafted a QB in next year's draft class. I just don't get the strategy here, I suppose. But this also has a huge domino effect on the rest of the NFL. You see, Myles Garrett wasn't the only edge rusher that was seeking a payday. I mean, I think this even transcends the edge rushing market. According to Ian Rappaport, Myles Garrett locking in at $40 million per year. This ups the ante for the next highest paid non-QB. Good news for Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, and others. Guys, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm going to be honest. I would not be surprised if the Cowboys now explore trading Micah Parsons as a result of this. It would make me really sad, but I don't think they have much of a choice. My assumption originally last offseason was that the Cowboys were going to pay Micah Parsons about $35 million a year. But now I wouldn't be surprised if Parsons demanded something like $41 million a year, which means the Cowboys would be paying CeeDee Lamb $34 million, Micah $41 million, and Dak $60 million. That's $135 million a year committed to 3 players. And on top of that, you're in the NFC East, a division with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and a team that faced them in the NFC Championship game in the Washington Commanders. Trey Hendrickson's contract is one to watch. If he was getting traded before, he's definitely getting traded now. I mean, this jump in salary is insane. Nick Bosa $34 million, Max Crosby $35.5 million, Myles Garrett $40 million. This is going to have a huge domino effect on the rest of the NFL. So let me know if you're a Browns fan, how do you feel about this move? It seems like they did it again. Let's overpay a really good player to keep him, even though they're probably not going to even sniff contention. Aside from that, I don't know if you guys heard, the Seattle Seahawks just traded Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders. We have a completely separate video on that. I'll meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.